Hey there, and thank you for joining me. I'm gonna stop myself right there. The audio quality of this intro clip and of the extra as well isn't really up to standards. Now, the audio hasn't been up to standards for the past few videos, so sorry about that. I've been using a shotgun microphone and that doesn't really seem to work for my situation. So I've got a lav mic now and audio should be a lot better. So I'm not using this intro clip, I'm using this one. So to get back to the intro, I bought a very old PC, an NMS9100 from Philips, and I bought it for only 25 euros, but I didn't know what kind of computer it was or if it even worked. So I got it home and it was really dirty. No, scratch that, it was disgusting and it didn't work. So in this video, we're going to try and clean it up and see if we can get it to work. So let's go.
It's time to open up the computer and see what the problem is. Here you can clearly see how dirty this PC actually is. Since we don't get any sign of life when we turn the PC on, the most obvious culprit is the power supply, so let's examine that first. With the power supply out, we can check out the insides. It's looking remarkably clean. There's just a little corrosion on the keyboard connector, probably from this copper contact. The system is running on an Intel 8088-2 CPU, which runs at a maximum of 8 MHz. The graphics card is branded Graphics Solutions-SR and can do monochrome, CGA and even EGA graphics. Time to test the power supply with a multimeter. There is no voltage on any of the 5 or 12 volt pins. I've also tried it with the hard drive attached, as some people suggested, but sadly it doesn't work. The original power supply has one big plug with 12 pins, but all 80 power supplies that I have 2 plugs like this, each with 6 pins. So they're both 12-pin power supplies, but I'm not sure if the pinout is the same. And since the original power supply cannot be measured for reference voltages, I have to think of something else. Let's focus on the power supply connection on the main board. To figure out its correct pinout, we can use the ISA bus. Just set the multimeter to continuity and put one probe on, for example, pin 1 of the ISA bus, which in this case is ground, and then with the other probe touch all of the 12 pins of the motherboard connector. If it beeps, that pin is ground. And we do the same for plus 5 volts, minus 5 volts, plus 12 and minus 12, which are all present in the ISA bus. As it turned out, the connector matches the pinout of my replacement 80 power supply. We can now try and start up the PC with this replacement power supply. Sadly, I didn't have the camera running at that exact time because after a few seconds it gave off the magic smoke. One of the capacitors on the main board died. None of the capacitors seem to show any signs of burning, so it's probably just best to replace all these orange caps. This is also a good time to replace the button cell on the board for a fresh CR2032 cell, which is a little bit smaller than the original but is also 3 volts. Next, we remove the guts of the old power supply . Then remove the guts of the new working power supply . And finally, we put the working internals into the housing of the original power supply. I named this beauty the Franken PSU. Now we got the system mostly running, it's time to try and clean the computer. Let's first focus on the computer case. Cleaning cloths are clearly not up to the task here. The layer of yuck is just too thick. Time for some drastic measures. Some hot water and soap is what this thing needs. While we're cleaning things with hot water, let's also disassemble the keyboard, which is also covered in a thick layer of nastiness. Once we have the keyboard fully disassembled, we can clean the case with some hot water and soap. Next, we pry off every key so we can clean them individually. With the 4 key, however, I accidentally pull off the entire key assembly, at which point the key spring flies off. You can see it here jumping into the hot water. That was a close call. As you can see, the keys are properly disgusting. So now let's start the tedious task of cleaning them individually with a cleaning sponge. Ah, much better. If you thought the keys looked bad, this is how it looks underneath. This is going to take a lot of cleaning. It cleaned up pretty good. So now let's put the keys back on using a picture I made before this assembly as a reference. For the 2 keys that came off with the entire key mechanism, we first need to put the spring back in and then press the entire thing back into place. Now for you geeks like me, this is how the key mechanism works. The spring is of course what makes the key spring back into its original position. And see these 2 contacts here? When they make a connection, a key press is generated. And as you can see, the PC is now constantly typing the number 5. And the white mechanism is what separates these 2 contacts and only allows them to touch when the key is pressed down. Here is the keyboard before cleaning it, and this is after. I'm truly amazed how much this keyboard cleaned up. Now all that remains is the monitor, and we're gonna do that LGR style. So cue the laid back jazz. Speed up the footage 2 times, and let's start cleaning things with cleaning tools made for cleaning things that are not clean. Now it's just a matter of putting everything back together. This metal support prevents the mainboard from flexing when you insert ISA cards. Pretty clever stuff. Let's put Franken PSU in here and connect everything. The last thing we need to do is put the graphics card back into the machine. And here it is, all cleaned up, booting into glorious MS-DOS.
So that was a successful restoration of the Philips New Media System 9100, and it took me a while to figure out why this logo seemed so familiar to me, but that is because this is actually the first PC that I ever owned. and having that back in my possession is awesome. So really happy that I got it to work, and booting it up will surely bring a smile to my face every time. So for now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time on the Retro Game Couch.